Tell me what the hell are you scared of when in the end the only
Where's the love? Right here on this podcast. Welcome to Love Drops, where your hosts and One Love ambassadors, Charles and Diane, will share love, hope, and inspirational topics taken from their journey and world events. We will also include on-location recordings and special pop-up guests from cool places all around the world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
whether big or small, love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never fails.
Welcome to another episode of Love Drop Podcast. I'm so excited about the guests we have today, our conversation topic, and just everything. I'm over the moon excited. I want to take a moment and give a shout out to Sarah Jane for connecting me with this fine gentleman. And Charles, you want to bring him to the mic?
Yes, yes. Love is expressed all over the world, 1,000 different ways. But when it comes from the heart, that is just unscripted. And with that said, I'd like to introduce our listening audience to a very, very good friend that touches our heart, Scott. With that said, briefly, Scott, you have the mic.
Why, thank you very much. My name is Scott Holmes. I am from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm an intuitive energy healer, still trying to figure out what that exactly means, but it's the best way to describe the work that I do with clients and also in the writing. I've written in 10 collaborations and in different venues, and it really is about sharing experience. It's sharing your understanding of what things are and being able to allow people to know they're not alone. We all go through experiences in life and we think we're probably the only ones that this has ever happened to. And much like in caregiving, that shared experience, that understanding, that just compassion that comes through, that someone else has been there, they've come out the other side whole, and that they indeed can do it themselves.
Wow, that's great, Scott. I really appreciate that. And you hit on our topic there in that introduction, and that is the heart and soul of caregiving. People that have been listening to Love Drops for a while and that know Charles and I personally know our story and our caregiving story, know my professional background with caregiving, my personal background with caregiving as far as with Charles. And Charles and I were talking this morning, and most of the time people look at caregivers, when you think of caregivers, they look at it from a feminine perspective. But nowadays, that is changing. That narrative is changing like so much in the world. And that's why it's important that we have you on today in this conversation, because you're giving that caregiver perspective from a male point of view. And we are so excited to hear that journey.
Yes, there is no set description for caregivers. It's being redefined as we speak. And then from a male or female perspective, it's basically caring with love. And that there's no set description for that. We love, we care, we give. We're caregivers.
Talk to us about your caregiving journey.
So I really found that out from my mom. I'm the oldest of four, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom who did absolutely everything. She painted the inside of the house. She took care of the outside. She took care of the kids. She took care of the laundry. She took care of the cooking. She was the caregiver. Her language was how she showed love to her family, was taking care of the family. And that really showed me and made an impact on me. Shortly after my youngest daughter, my third daughter, was born, she was 13 months old, we found her comatose in the crib. Could not get her to react, could not get her to anything. She was just blank. My wife called me and said, "We're going to the doctor's office, meet me there." So here I go. I'm driving for work. We don't know what's going on. She's holding her in the waiting room, waiting. This huge waiting room. There's 3 doctors on staff, and there's probably 25 people there. And she's holding my daughter. And all of a sudden, the twitch happens. And we had a dog who had seizures. So we'd been through that quite a bit. And I said, I think she's having a seizure. So I pick her up and I bring her into the doctor's office. Within 10 minutes, she was in a grand mal. A kid who had never had seizures, no activity, nothing. So now it's my wife and I, a nurse and 2 doctors in the room trying to solve this because she's in grand mal. The doctor looks, gets an IV hooked up. We live about 15 miles south of Boston. He says he's got a waiting room full of patients now because everything stopped. He calls the ambulance and says, I'm going in with her. And so he gets in the back of the ambulance and says, I'm not handing her over until I hand her over to a doctor. We ride and do at rush hour in Boston. If you've ever been to Boston, you understand that rush hour is a misnomer because nobody's going over 20 miles an hour. So I was about 3 feet from the back of that ambulance the entire way into Boston. And it was really the first time they brought her into the emergency room. First time we'd ever really heard her cry. She's one of those happy babies. You know, the ones that never cry. They have no reason. So they're good. And we heard her cry for the really extended first time. She had herpes encephalitis simplex 2. What we found. She ended up in the PICU, the pediatric ICU, and it stopped just short of killing her. What it was herpes is a virus that can attack vital organs in the body. Most people pass it off as just kind of on your lip, a little sore, and you're done. Well, in her case, it attacked her brain. And it was interesting because one of the most frightening places I've ever been is a PICU. You have children of all ages who are on that line between life and death. And we were in the PICU for almost a month before she came out. And then it was extended stay in the hospital. And we weren't sure how to even take care of her. I mean, honestly, she had a G-tube in. She really didn't act or react to anything. And we didn't know what was going to happen. We ended up bringing her home. My father-in-law, who was one of the most giving, kind, caring men I've ever met, he said, you owe her that chance to come home. So we brought her home. We had 2 older children, 2 older girls, and we took 24-hour care of her. And at this point, she was about 18 months old. And we had her home for almost 2 years. The problem is that everything revolved around her, and we had 2 older children. And 24-hour care, if anybody has ever been through that, because her needs, she couldn't handle any of her needs. My wife did an incredible job. She was a warrior. I'd get up and go to work and come home and, she'd go, okay, she's yours. And because she had really quite enough. So we did that for 2 years until in the state of Massachusetts is one of the 2 states at the time that had pediatric nursing home beds. There were 260 pediatric nursing home beds, and we applied. We have to go before a panel and of 13 people in the state to be able to okay her to go into a pediatric nursing home. And the thing that I wanted to show it, and it's probably one of the most scary things that I've been through, because you have 13 people deciding the fate of your daughter.
Right.
And they didn't usually allow parents to be at the hearing, forget anything else, but my wife and I were there, and I just wanted to leave them with, look, we're giving up our daughter. You're not giving us anything. We're at a point where we can't take care of her anymore. We had OT, PT, a nurse coming into the house on a daily basis, and we couldn't maintain it. So they agreed, and it was 45 minutes away. She was the youngest, so she got very spoiled because we had a rocking chair next to her bed. And so the staff at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, when she would wake up, would sit there and rock her because they had nothing else to do and would spoil the heck out of her. So anytime we took her home, she expected at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to be played with. Oh, yeah. And so we would take her home for an extended period of time over Christmas, which was absolutely wonderful. It was that magical time of the year. And we were very limited as to when we could take her home. the thought was if you could take her home more than 15 days during the course of the year, you could take care of her for the extended period of time, which was absolutely silly. But it was what it was, and we made the best of it. And we saw her at least twice a week. And my daughters grew up knowing and being able to deal with anyone who had special needs. They didn't look away. They kind of looked at them. For anybody out there who's got a child with special needs, people generally look away. When you're pushing a child in a wheelchair, they look different, they feel different, and people kind of look away at it. I always get down and I make a point of saying hello to whoever's in that chair. Whatever way they can communicate. My daughter went to a nursing home with 62 other children who were at different ages, all the way up to the age of 22, and they could communicate. My daughter could communicate through facial expressions. She couldn't speak. She had very limited mobility. She was always either lying down or in her specialized chair. And it was amazing the care she got there. But it also allowed for my wife and I to take a step back, but also to allow my daughters to have, quote unquote, a normal life. In other words, everything didn't revolve around care of my younger daughter. They could go to school and they could do after school, and they were both in dance. And so they were able to do all of those things that their friends could do without the restriction. And so the caring for us, it allowed us to raise our older two daughters with a modicum of the ability to do those things that other kids could do.
Yes. Wow. That is something, because the caregiving, when you have a special needs child, which first of all, I want to say I've never heard of a pediatric nursing home. So I've been a critical care nurse and in nursing care over 30 years. Never heard of a pediatric nursing home. So that just blew my mind. Secondly, it's important to note here that when you have a child with special needs and you have other children, then the extra care is depleting care somewhere. So, just finding that balance is almost impossible when you're, trying to do it in the home. So I commend you and your wife for making that decision for your daughter. That was a very selfless decision. And it was also just love. That was love, because I can't tell you how many people selfishly, not intentionally selfishly, but just selfishly want to hold on. They don't want to let go because they feel like if they let go, then in some way they're failing that person or child, whereas not putting into that whole, I guess, situation that there are two other children too. So, I commend you guys for
Thank you.
that was very brave.
But it also allowed us advocacy. There was a very active parents group down there, and we advocated on the state level for them. We put on programs. We did all kinds of things down there, and we're very active. We were advocates. There was a group of 6 pediatricians that took care of the kids down there, and we were the pain in the ass parents. We were always we were always there. We were on the nursing staff. We were like, well, this is easier for us. It's like, well, I understand that, but it's not in the best interest of my daughter.
Absolutely.
My daughter, who couldn't communicate very well, because the pediatricians would walk through and they would kind of sign off on the kids on a monthly basis, and they didn't really see the kids. Many times the pediatrician's like, well, we're just here to hold them until they pass away. I'm like, no, that's not, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We did unfortunately have to go to many a funeral because the kids naturally just didn't have the ability to live a normal, healthy life. So to get to the end of it, my daughter, who was in and out of the hospital, probably the time she was down there, probably a dozen times, was brought into Boston hospitals, floating, Mass General. We did the entire tour of all the hospitals in Boston. They all knew us fairly well because she was a regular.
Mm-hmm.
And then came the phone call one night to say she's passed without any There was no ambulance, no anything. They walked in and she had just passed in the middle of the night in her sleep. As a parent, with everything, she had had multiple surgeries because of her inability to move, because her hip subluxation and just all kinds of things. And for her to go peacefully was a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
We go to the hospital and they say, "Do you want us to do an autopsy?" And we're thinking, my God, she's been cut so many times. There is no way that we want her. She went peacefully, and that's as we could have asked, without pain, because she'd undergone so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were so thankful of the care that she was given there. We were so thankful for everything that happened, all the people that were involved in her life. You know, there was an educational component that we could never have really foreseen, because she would have had to go to school, where there they had an educational component as well. And she got to experience all kinds of things that we could never have provided. So
Mm-hmm.
it was an amazing adventure. We, as parents, couldn't have asked for anything more. You know, you make those life and death decisions for anyone who's in chronic care. You make those life and death decisions at that time with the information that you have. When you look back, you go, well, if I knew, I would have made a different decision about this or that or the other thing. But, you know, we always use the parameters of what will give her the best quality of life right now with the least amount of pain.
Yes.
You know, we would have doctors say, well, you know, this is what we do with these kids. It's like, time out, guys. We're gonna talk about this. We're the parents. We're gonna make the decision.
That's
If
right.
this isn't in her best interest, you're not going to do it. And by the way, I want to say, as a nurse, thank you. The nurses in Boston taught us how to be advocates.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors never taught us a thing. I give automatic respect to a nurse. Doctors have to earn it, sincerely, because doctors come in, they give it, and the nurses will tell you how to care for somebody and whether something is right for the patient. If you've ever been in medical teaching hospitals, the nurses teach those doctors.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so if they can teach doctors, I think they're pretty good at teaching parents about how to take care of their children. And for 15 years, she died when she was 15. And the amount of people that we connected with in our experiences could never have been replicated. The number of medical staff that we were able to converse with, to understand, to bring understanding to us, it would never have been able to be done otherwise. It gave us
Right.
an education, which
Yes.
leads us to the next part of the story, that which we'll get into.
Okay. So and I know
Well,
where we're going because I know you, but I want to say this part, and that is you were able to be educated throughout this process in order to then educate your other daughters, and then as well as to be able to advocate for your daughter. May I ask her name?
Her name was Amanda Rose.
Amanda Rose. I like that. I love it.
And she lived up to that name, by the way. Amanda meaning love. Rose was after her grandmother, whose name was Rose. And we have a picture that was taken when she was about 2.5 years old, after she had come home from the hospital. And the photographer put a rose in her hand. And it's a picture that stays with us, you know?
I love that. And it's just like your choice to love her enough to put her in the hands of others. That's a huge trust. That's a huge trust.
Oh, yeah.
Nursing home, yeah, huge trust. And and they took care of her. And so it allowed you to be educated, as I was saying, to advocate for her at the very highest level because there was knowledge. And it also allowed you to be placed with other parents that were going through similar situations, which goes back to what you said at the beginning. Sometimes you feel like you're the only one in it by yourself, but then you get to see that you're not the only one. And so as you love on others, especially in your time of pain, time of storm, oh my God, it powers you to no ends.
Two quick stories. We go into a floating hospital in Boston, and she's in the PICU, and we're in the waiting room because you could only stay in there for so long. And we had parents who came out, and they were comforting us.
Mm.
And as we got to know them, they had a child who had 7 heart surgeries by the time they were not even 1 year old. And their daughter had lived in the hospital basically the entire time since she was born. And they were comforting us. And I was looking at the capacity for someone to be able to give that love to somebody else. You know, we had 13 months of happy, healthy baby, and they had none. And yet they were comforting us. And that in and of itself was just, it showed me, you know, when you're about ready to give up, you're looking up and going, okay, God, I don't know what you got, but please just allow me to go through this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. That I'm saying that's amazing.
It is, and throughout it all, just to even think about how it's all interwoven through love and blending of all your individual personalities towards a common goal of love towards your daughter. And everything else that is coming, if it's not with love, it was just warded off. And you
Yeah.
guys continue. And then to receive some love from folks that have gone through all of what they had gone through, but yet they were still able to extend a helping hand of love for you and your family.
And that helps you to extend that love on because that's a big thing about love. It's contagious. So when you love, when you give love, you will receive love. You really will. It will find you. So I know we're pivoting, but I just want to take a moment to say that I really appreciate you sharing with us about Amanda Rose. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
One of the things that was striking, there were 62 kids down there. And when a family has a multi-handicapped child, there's a 60 to 75% divorce rate, separation, because it breaks apart the family. There is a grieving that goes on. When you have a child, when you have children, you have a certain expectation. You want them to go to kindergarten. You want to go to elementary school. You want them to go to junior high school, college, get married, have children. And you lose all of those aspects. And what would happen is something would come up with kids who were Amanda's age, and they'd be graduating from elementary school, and she wouldn't be there. That was something that she wasn't a part of anymore. So there was a grieving process that goes on with that within the family. And a lot of times it breaks families apart.
Mm.
So one of the things that you had alluded to was teaching my daughters. So we were at the hospital, and the ambulance came in to take my daughter into Boston. And they started asking questions of her, of what are her medications, what is her, all of that. And my daughter started answering. And one of the nurses looked at and said, well, no, her parents need to answer. I said, no, they got this. And they knew what her medications were. And at the time, they're 8 and 9 years old, okay? And they're telling the nurse exactly what my daughter was on, what she needed. They told her everything. And the unit from the ambulance that would come out, we're like, okay, we got this. And afterwards, when we got into Boston, I saw the nurse that had come out. And she said, we were so impressed with your daughters because they knew exactly what the care was for their sister. They knew it. And we felt and always felt that being as open and honest about everything that was going on with their younger sister was imperative for them understanding fully what it was that we needed to do. We would go down twice a week. It was 45 minutes down, 45 minutes back. So, you know, it took a chunk out, and they would come. And of course, as they got older, it was like, yeah, no, we have to go. And it was always, yes, it's important. And so they took an active role with their sister. They were involved in high school with JCs, and a bunch of kids wanted to bring Halloween to the kids down at the nursing home. So these kids come in and they've got bags of candy and everything else, and they push 35 kids into the cafeteria in all these contraptions, making all of these noises. These high school kids walk in and stop dead, staring like, oh my God, what do I do? They were overwhelmed because of all of these kids. They're in all these contraptions. They're lying down. Some they're making odd noises. They're making odd movements. And my daughters didn't think anything of it because they'd always been around it. They knew the kids. They didn't think anything. And after they got through with it, all the kids went to their rooms, and then they took time to go to each of the rooms. And when they went and were able to deal with them one-on-one, they went, hey, I have that poster on my wall. And they started seeing the kids that were their ages in a different light because they could see them one-on-one. And they would react, the kids would react to them. They say, hey, John, how you doing? And they get that funny smile and they go, oh, okay. And so my daughters grew up with that, and they really felt a part of caring for their sister. And that was so important to us in helping maintain the integrity of the family because it wasn't a secret. It wasn't somebody that was shoved off into the corner and not heard from again. She was an active part of our life. She always was there. She was at any celebration we had, we'd pull her out of the nursing home and we'd bring her, Not everybody knew how to deal with her because not everybody knows how to deal with multiply involved children.
Right.
So it was really that part that helped solidify our family to be able to keep and maintain it. I talked about the divorce rate. It's because there's so many strains. We would get a phone call at 2:00 in the morning that Amanda was being sent to the hospital. And I would get up at 2:00 in the morning and I would drive to the local hospital and be there in the emergency room because I knew how difficult it was to deal with all the idiosyncrasies that she had.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be there and I would talk to the doctor. They weren't used to that.
That's great advocacy. Yeah.
Just as an aside, we had a pediatrician and she was in a really bad place. And I said, she needs to go to Boston. And he's like, no, she doesn't. I said, no, she really does because you can't provide the care she needs. And he got all up and, puffed up. And I said, okay, do me a favor. Call Mass General right now. So he calls Mass General, gets them on the phone. He talks to them. And they said, can you put Mr. Holmes on the phone? Because they knew who I was. So I got on the phone. They said, Mr. Holmes, does she need to come in? I said, absolutely. She's in tough shape. He said, okay. Gave the phone back to the doctor. The doctor looked at me, slammed the phone down and said, I will not take care of her. And he walked out. It's on you. They came down, they brought her up to Boston. She recovered many, many times. She was so bad that we expected to get the phone call at, the next morning after we'd gone into Boston that she had passed.
Right.
My wife and I would go into Boston the next day. There she'd be in a PICU or somewhere else, and she'd be smiling at us. And it's like, all right, you put us through all that, and she's here smiling because she
right.
was.
You brought up such a good point because when you're caregiving and when you're advocating for your family member, two things. Number one, you know better than any doctor or nurse. And as a critical care nurse of over 20 years, I knew that. So the family member that was the caregiver, that was my expert for the patient because they knew even more and they gave me information so that I could advocate. So in working in tandem and as a team, you can really keep that patient up front. And the second thing is just the egos of the doctors. So imagine you deal with that, with Amanda Rose, but as a retired critical care nurse, I dealt with it over and over and over because you're going to bat for these, patients. So what it took is you had to master the language of egotology. So you had to find ways to, in your verbiage, your narrative, to kind of make it like it's your idea or what do you think like this to get what you want. And, after so many years, you get really good at it, and you can get what you want. And, sometimes it requires like humble pie, as the advocate or whatever. But to get your result, hey, I eat that humble pie every time, because the patient is number one. And, just that experience you had with the doctor, just advocacy, because it was a balance. The ones at Mass knew you. And so it had great respect for you. And, a lot of times just doctors don't want to be wrong.
They don't want to be wrong. They don't.
No.
It was when we had to learn and we understood that we had to learn medical ease, that medical communities started respecting what we were saying. We had to learn. For example, Amanda's phenobarb level was absurd. Phenobarb levels are supposed to be between 16 and 20. Hers was between 56 and 60 in order to maintain the integrity of her seizures. So anytime anybody saw that, they go, whoa, wait a minute, we got to take her off. It's like, time out. Don't do it. I had one doctor who said her phenobarb was extremely high. We just wanted to reduce, a dose. We thought it was 1. She went 48 hours without phenobarb. And then she went through grand mols for 24 hours. Needless to say, I was a little bit upset.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. He's lucky that there were other people around because I was so angry.
Yep.
And he was young. And we had a meeting with the director, with the doctor, and we sat down and he said, because she came in at 3:00 in the morning, I'm sure he's got 16 hours under his belt. And he said, well, because of that, I said, all you had to do was ask. We were there.
Right.
She said, and her file was about 2.5 inches thick at the time. She said, do you know how thick that file is? I said, all you had to do was ask.
Absolutely.
Period. I said,
Absolutely.
don't you ever do that because you put her at risk. Just because they would not talk to the person next, their advocate.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I've had doctors that were intimidated by my presence, not because I was aggressive, not because I screamed and hollered, not because they knew that I knew, and they weren't sure what they knew. So it is just all about the ego, right? And it's just like, but it shouldn't be about any of that. It should be about the patient, about Amanda. And what you just said is a prime example of how people cannot think outside of the box. And that is what made me the phenomenal nurse that I was. And yes, I'll say that is because I had a way of being comfortable out of the box. I had a way of just looking at things that maybe weren't supposed to be. Everything on paper is not the way that it is. Her body was accustomed to those levels. So I would have been okay with that. But you have people that look at a heart monitor where it says the oxygen is at 0, but the patient's over there breathing and fine, and they're freaking out because the machine says that it's at 0. You got to look at the patient, and you have to look at every situation as unique. So again, I say, Amanda was extremely blessed that she got to have you and your wife as parents. And just the way that you provided support, because a lot of times you would see the mom doing the things that you did. And so I can just speak from what you're saying. A lot of what kept you guys together is because you were true partners and you truly wanted what was best for Amanda. And it wasn't a two-fold partnership, it was 4, because even your other 2 daughters were right there.
Absolutely.
So it was truly a family. It was a family affair for sure.
Yes, and throughout it all, staying focused on the primary objective, Amanda. And when the doctors are saying whatever they wanted to say, if it wasn't on focus, the primary objective, it just didn't rattle you at all because that was outside the box. No, we're talking about my daughter. Let's talk about this and staying focused there. And I think the blending of all 4 people's personality towards that was a major force that they couldn't address. They couldn't deal with that.
Or understand.
My wife was, when I met her, was the biggest wallflower. She would be at a party and people wouldn't even know she was there because she always kind of faded in the background. She would never draw attention to herself. So we're in Boston, a world-renowned, and I mean, world-renowned doctor, and we're walking in, and the doctor looks at us and says, "Well, we're going to do this, this, and this because this is what we do in this case." And he basically told my wife she didn't have, he was the doctor, she didn't have a role. She stood up, she slapped both hands on the desk. She looked at him and said, "You have to go through me. I'm the mom. You have to answer to me." He actually ended up passing us along because he'd never been spoken like that to. And
Right.
it was Mama Bear.
That's right.
She was the quietest person you'd ever want to meet. And it just brought that out in her.
Right. Quiet storm. But your kids will do that. Like you said, Mama Bear, because yeah, I'm Mama Bear too.
Oh, yeah.
And the kid, oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So I want to get to the part as we are just kind of wrapping it up. You already brought up earlier, about the phone call, and then we kind of went to some, happier times. And so
Yeah.
as we're concluding, I want to just get back to that phone call that Amanda Rose had transitioned.
So we'd always said that with everything, the ambulance rides and the constant attention and all of this stuff that she had gone through, that most likely what will happen is she'll go quietly and we won't even know anything about it. And that's exactly what happened. There was a part of us that were thankful in gratitude that she didn't have to suffer anymore. As she got older, there was more pain involved. Her body wasn't growing right. She was a 15-year-old teenager, and so hormones were happening, and all of these things were going on, and she was having a very rough time of it. It took, for me, it was a year. I was working in Boston at the time, and my boss pulled me in after a year after she had passed, and he said, "I want to talk to you." I said, "Okay." He said, "It's time." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I've been to work every day. I haven't missed a day. I've been here every day. I've done it." He said, "Yes, but you have not smiled once in a year."
Mm.
He said, "It's time."
Oh, wow.
And I looked at him like, "What?" And he kind of gave me the slap on the back of the head saying, "Okay, time for you to wake up."
Mm.
I had been sleepwalking for a year. The thing when you lose a child, we could not comfort each other. We were both going through that same feeling. In caring for her in Boston, we didn't ask people very often for help. We did it ourselves.
Mhm.
And in grieving, we needed to look for outside help. We went to counseling. We went to family counseling. We went to individual counseling. We sent the girls for counseling because it was so overwhelming for us. And it was a focus for us as a family to remember her in her best days, when there were Christmases. My oldest daughter, when she passed, put together 8 different poster-sized boards of pictures of Amanda. I mean, I never even realized we had that many pictures, right? But she put together those. She stayed up all night and had 8 of them because that was her way of going through all those memories of going through all of those good times, bad times, in between times. And my daughter used to have, nobody ever knew what to get her, so they get her stuffed animals. Well, if you saw her bed at the nursing home, you would never have found her because there were so many stuffed animals all over her bed. And when we brought her home, we had to bring home at least a dozen because they were always all around her, these stuffed animals. You couldn't get her anything else, and so people would buy them. So we literally lined the casket with these stuffed animals.
Mm.
And between the flowers and stuffed animals, you couldn't even see the casket. You could just see her. And it was a celebration. And we always, always, always try to celebrate those times. We celebrated her birthday, not when she died.
Yes. Yes.
And that was one of the way. My wife was a school teacher for 25 years, and Amanda happened to pass on the very first day of school.
Mm.
After that, my wife had a very hard time the first day of school because that's what it reminded her of.
Mm-hmm.
My daughters were in college at the time, and it was my middle daughter's very first day of college, of
Mm-hmm.
going to classes. So that's how she started her college career. It was adjustments. It was staying together. It was talking it through. It was allowing for the grief to come out in any way it showed, whether it was roses, Amanda Rose, having roses. I don't know if you've ever seen them gold covered roses from the jeweler. And so my daughters and my wife each had one, and that would symbolize her.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really maintain the integrity of keeping her in our thoughts. And much like how we brought her through this world, maintain that she was up front, she was a part, even though she was gone, she was still a part of our family. And I truly believe that allowed us to really get through those tough times because it wasn't hidden away, it wasn't just pushed aside. She
Mm-hmm.
was a big part of our family and maintained that. And that's how we as a family coped with that.
Wow. Ooh. So, man, what would be a love drop that you could give to a family, maybe in similar situation, or even that have lost a child? What is a love drop that you could give at this time?
Don't do it yourself, by yourself, alone. You need the integrity of a system of friends, of family. Don't isolate. Allow the energy in, allow the love in from other people. Probably the hardest thing that I found from grieving is being able to do anything but feel that grief when you're going through it. That it is so isolating. It's like a cocoon around you, that bubble that you're walking around in. And being open to other people sharing their love, their concern, their compassion, all of those energies to allow it in because it lessens the hurt. It breaks you open to be able to see life again. It takes away the darkness, that light that people bring into you. Allow that in.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Wow. And it's so poignant because most of the time people want to just stay in that cocoon. Most of the time people just want to continue to grieve. It's like the grief is their blanket, the grief is their connection to that person. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Charles, your favorite question or what you were going to say?
Yes, I was going to say, out of everything that you've shared with our listening audience, what is one of the best ways for our listening audience to get in touch with you?
Oh, okay. Website is rscottholmes.com. On Facebook also, but that's the easiest way to be able to get a hold. Currently doing hospice work also and helping people transition. Never thought I'd be able to do that, by the way. And also, so I have conversations with people that most people aren't comfortable with having. So I am here.
Oh, I love that. So that's rscott.com.
rscottholmes.com.
rscottholmes.com. And I will put that in the narrative. And I just want to thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your precious Amanda Rose with us. I felt her presence, even as we spoke about her. And the more you speak about her, remember her, say her name, she stays alive on and on.
And thank you for letting us all walk through that with you. It was
Yeah,
very touching.
I
yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on and be able to tell my story. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. And as we say always to our listeners, do check out Scott, check out his website, support what he's doing out there in the world. And if you're someone that needs to talk and maybe don't have anyone to talk with about, your grief, then reach out to Scott. He is definitely a bright light. Scott, thank you for your time. It is refundable. So we appreciate that. And for our listeners, do share the episode, spread the word, share the love. And if it resonates, subscribe and follow us. And until next time, Charles and I say,
One love.
No, never a second will I waste, never an opportunity to taste the sweetness of this life.
Thank you for tuning in to the Love Drops podcast. Be sure to follow this podcast and share the love with everyone you know. Until next time, this is Charles and Diane signing off. One love. One love.
Love it conquers all, whether big or small. Love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never fails.